Hello again and welcome to DanWhiteBooks, the book review channel where we add insight into the worlds of literature, both for those who do read and those who don't. Today we venture back to the darker tales of a Mr. Stephen King, heading way back to 1981. Anyone who knows Mr. King will be aware that his earlier work is some of his most gruesome. For better or worse, today we review Cujo by Stephen King. Cujo is a book that was written fairly early in Stephen King's writing career and at a time where he was in the midst of drug and alcohol addiction. In fact, Stephen King even mentions that he remembers little to nothing about the writing process of this book. I was wary of such facts but pressed on regardless, as Cujo, at least on face value, has everything you'd want in a great Stephen King book. It has a scary monster and of course a child that faces severe danger. Both hallmarks of any great Stephen King work. Cujo tells the tale of a small family living in rural Maine made up of husband Vic, wife Donna and their son Tad Trenton. The family have fallen on tough times both in terms of the relationship between Vic and his wife Donna and in regards to Vic's future employment. Early on we learn that Donna has been sleeping with another man, a decision she deeply regrets and one that creates a mass divide between Vic and his wife. I must be clear, this book is not a happy tale, not by any means, and plays out as one tragedy after the next. I can only really think of one upbeat moment and King draws little attention to it. You're later introduced to a large St. Bernard named Cujo, who is an all-loving, albeit intimidating dog owned by a local mechanic in the rural farmland of Maine. On first introductions, Cujo is an innocent dog who means to cause no harm to anyone. This of course changes when Cujo goes chasing after a rabbit and gets his muzzle stuck in a cave. He's bitten by a rabid bat that is infected with rabies. Slowly, Cujo changes to something horrific, and events around Maine County all fall in a perfect harmony as they put both Donna and her son Tad in a terrible danger. I have a lot to say about this book because, as I mentioned earlier, it's no happy tale. And even along the lines of a Stephen King work, this is somewhat of a depressing read, more so than any other book I've read by him, and I've even read Pet Sematary. The book darts back and forth between Donna and Tad, who are stuck in their broken down car while a rabid Cujo stalks and attacks them, and then to Vic and his business partner, who are in deep water over an advertising campaign and subsequent product recall for a brand of cereal. It is a contrast that doesn't really work and a side plot I had no interest in. You go between these two narratives for some time and in some detail, along with other minor tales which again did little to interest me. If anything, they serve to build up the mass of coincidences that perfectly get Donna and her son Tad stuck in the vicinity of the maddened dog Cujo. This is a set of events that come together in an eerie fashion, as if some greater force is at play. However, the constant talk of a cereal campaign and Vic's troubles at his advertising agency is somewhat laborious and feels a little bit out of place. This book is a horror tale through and through, and Cujo is described as a grotesque beast that will certainly change the way you look at any slobbering St. Bernard. This King does well, and one would expect as much. King has a brilliance at turning relatively normal everyday things into creepy and hair-raising monsters. But although this book has a scary beast, it lacks the depth of his other works and often feels a little lost. The second half of the book picks up pace, but at this point I felt the damage was already done. Vic leaves his business trip early when he can't get a response from the family home, and after a long period away drives back to Maine. Donna and Tad are stranded in a broken down Punto while Cujo lurks menacingly outside. And this goes on for a long time with not a lot happening. The descriptions of this rabid dog are as ever brilliant, but the story as a whole is severely lacking, and then the end comes, and I won't spoil it, but it's dark. Very dark, and not in a grounded way. This end comes out of nowhere, and the wording used really drives it all home. After 400 plus pages, the tale ends, and although those last 50 or so pages were the kind that had my eyes stuck to the page, my feeling when finishing this book was strongly of disappointment. I'm used to reading the darker stories, but this one I did not feel good about. When I normally write these book reviews, I don't need to look up the character names. However, with this book review, I had to remind myself they were quickly forgotten. Now, this is a Stephen King book, and so I would always warn that I may be more critical because I've read a great many of Stephen King's books. In fact, he is the author who I've read the most of, and so I'm always comparing one book to another. Sadly, this one I just wouldn't recommend, that is unless you're a big fan, because there are parts that will keep you entertained, but on the whole this book is severely let down by both the overarching narrative and on the development of the central characters. With this in mind, I would score Cujo a 55 out of 100 and would only really recommend it to those who are fans of Stephen King's work, because there are moments that instill the great horror he is known for, but they are rare and rather fleeting. There is certainly a lot worse you could read, and even as a bad book in the repertoire of Stephen King, this is far from awful, but neither close to brilliant. My friends, thank you very much for watching another book review done. This is the lowest reviewed book I've ever done on this channel, unfortunately. I mean, as a book, it's okay. As a Stephen King work, it's okay. It doesn't stand out very much. It felt underdeveloped. Maybe that was because of what Stephen King was going through at the time, but sadly it was a bit of a, I hate to say this because I love Stephen King, but it was a bit of a bore in parts, and the ending is dark, very dark. Nonetheless, if you are a fan of Stephen King, I would certainly give it a go, see how you feel, because you may feel differently to me. Thank you again for watching, my friends. I will see you here again soon with another book review. Bye bye.